So I think my biggest advice, as much as possible, is like find a couple of things that you can do and try to do them sustainably. It's much better to just commit to like, this is my weekly volunteer gig and I'm going to show up for this one organization cause every single week and really maintain that. I would take that over, someone who attends a meeting sporadically here or there, but doesn't really like engage. So like find your thing that you're really, really, really passionate about. And it's okay if that's just one or two things, but if you can do it consistently, I think that's really the most helpful thing.
One quick thing brings you easy, actionable ways to support your local community in times where we need it most. If you're feeling overwhelmed and don't know where to start, join us on this journey as we make meaningful connections with local businesses, organizations, and neighbors. Today we are joined by Josie Pinto, founder and executive director of the Reproductive Freedom Fund of New Hampshire. We chat about everything from grassroots operations in a post-Roe v. Wade world to the best ways to support reproductive freedom organizations in your area.
Roe falling was really our big moment because I think like it was very focused on repro, and I just think this moment we're all just so scattered and there's a million issues, so it doesn't feel as much of what it felt like when Roe fell because everyone was focused solely on repro, and now it's like there's just so many issues that it's hard to know where to even put your energy.
Yeah.
So I'm calling it more of like a trickle right now. It's not like the flood that came when Roe fell.
Yeah.
It's a nice steady trickle of interest and support. So
that's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's easier to maintain too.
You feel like you can manage like the...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not mad about it because we didn't really know what to do with 200 people wanting to volunteer in one day. Like literally we had 200 like people reach out like the day after and we're like, oh my God, this is a lot. Yeah.
What did you do?
So we built several programs and plugged them in. A lot of them became our drivers. That was like the big thing because we could take as many as possible, train them, and then depending on where they are in the state, we just call them, hey, we've arrived from Dover to the clinic, like that kind of thing. So that was one easy way to plug them in, but yeah, I had to sort of build specific volunteer programs. Yeah.
Right. Wow. That's incredible that you were able to, just sort of adjust like that.
Yeah. I think we knew it was coming a little bit, and the election honestly caught me more off guard than Roe falling. Because I had been like hearing about and preparing for Roe falling in a lot of ways. The election, I think I was a little blindsided by.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't like mentally like think about it. So and that happened. I was like, oh, guess I have to mentally think about it.
Yeah. Have a lot of people reached out since the election too? Do you see like another?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I'm hoping it's going to be more sustained this time because the Roe falling was like everyone really cared for like a summer and then it sort of faded again. So I'm hoping it's more of a like steady but sustained energy. That's my hope.
Yeah.
That's what I'm putting out there in the world. Yeah. Yeah. Because, people move on so quickly. So I'm hoping with this, at least people can stay focused for like 4 years. Which is a lot to ask of people to stay focused for 4 years, but annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what the current proposed policy is, how is that affecting how you serve the community?
So I think it's a lot of like what could come. It's not a lot of it's happening now. So one big one that is kind of in the pipeline rumor mill right now is the Comstock Act. Do either of you two know about the Comstock Act?
I've heard it, but let's give us that 101 for a lot of our listeners.
So it's really interesting because it's a very antiquated law from like the 1800s they never took it off the books, but they also haven't enforced it in a really long time. It is the original law that Margaret Sanger got arrested under before we even had things like the abortion pill. Like it is, been around for a long time. But what it specifically bars is the mailing of items that have to do with like abortion information, contraception. So it's pretty broad, but it's specific to mailing and it's specific to like things deemed like contraband. So we're really worried that it's going to affect the availability of mailing abortion pills, which is a huge way that people are accessing abortion care right now, is we have all this great telehealth where you can just have pills shipped to your door. That's a big question mark right now with the Comstock because it obviously the U.S. Postal Service is how we're doing most of the things. And that applies to like FedEx and stuff I recently learned. So it's not even like we could go private. We'd have to literally invent our own mail system. So that one feels like a really big challenge, not even just for us, but for the ecosystem at large, because there's so many people that now know about the availability of these pills by mail and like rural areas and banned states, and that's how you're doing it. So that's kind of like the big one that I think not enough people are talking about coming down the pipeline.
And for that one, there's no like timeline or anything, right? It's just kind of like a waiting game to see if they decide to start enforcing it.
So it's just about, if they are actively going to choose to enforce it. And then also, how are they going to like apply it? I don't know.
Right.
They got to search every package. So yeah, it's definitely a big question mark right now, but you're scaring people.
Yeah. And so how do you feel like you're kind of like preparing, even just in that specific one, you talked about like potentially, inventing a new mailing system.
Yeah, exactly. So I was literally late because I was at the post office mailing Plan B. We mail a lot of Plan B around the state because we're up in Berlin. We're in the North Country. We're in the Upper Valley. Like we can't be driving out there all the time. So one way we are considering moving is actually using this driver network I was just telling you about. We have over 70 trained and vetted drivers. We're considering maybe they are the ones that are going to help us actually deliver the Plan B around the state from like central hubs like Dover, Manchester, and get it to where it needs to go. So, but that's one way that we're considering using our volunteer capacity.
I don't know about you, but like I always feel, it makes me feel better as like a normie to hear you talking about that. If this sort of crisis happens, like people are already thinking about this.
Yeah, that's how I feel about lawyers right now. Right. Like lawyers are like, we're thinking about all the potential situations. I'm like, great, someone should be.
Thank you for taking on that burden.
We need an adult in every category. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for being the adult in this.
Yeah, it's one category. Yeah, totally.
So you said those are volunteer drivers?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible that people are volunteering their time to do that.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, speaking of the only, I think, statewide bill that we're really scared about right now is there's a bill that would prohibit driving minors to get an abortion.
Okay.
So that's another one that we're just trying to make a plan around so that we're, complying if it passes. But also we really hope it doesn't because minors deserve access to abortion just like anyone. So yeah, I'd say that's the statewide one that we're most closely watching in terms of like would directly affect our work. And I talked with Ken and the 15-week abortion ban that was pulled. So that's kind of our biggest active threat that I'm aware of at the State House.
Yeah.
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 You never know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. As Ken told you, luckily there's a lot of other people that are like at the State House doing all of that. So that's one area I feel like I can leave to other people because we are the only abortion fund in the state. We're the only ones like uniquely doing what we're doing. So
really,
yeah, trying to just like really hone in on sort of the how are people getting care today piece. Doing what I can in my specific lane, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about kind of like easing into the conversation when you talk about what you do. And so a lot of people find themselves in conversations about abortion, around the dinner table with people they care about. And it can be a really divisive subject with a lot of misinformation.
Definitely.
Do you feel like you have like talking points for anybody who, is about to see family and knows it's going to come up because they're passionate about what's happening?
Yeah, definitely. I think my number one is like don't mirror the rights talking points because I think that happens a lot. So I think a lot of it is like about correcting people's language. Like, for example, post-birth abortions. That's not a thing. That's literally not a thing. That's just a birth. Can like really correcting harmful stereotypes around that. We know most people getting abortions in the third trimester. That's a medical necessity. Not a lot of people, not impossible, but not a lot of people are just having abortions in the third trimester. It has to do with either their health or the health of the baby. And those are really hard and tragic cases. And so I think we need to just be realistic about what that looks like because that is kind of the talking point that the right really is hanging on to. And I also think, sharing abortion stories, destigmatizing it. Like, I know, with my family, like dealing with antis, one of the best ways to combat it was just to encourage my family members that have had abortions to share those. And it really changes people's perception when they go from thinking they don't know anyone who's had it to, oh, your wife or your aunt or your, someone you're really close to has had it. I think that can really bring the issue home a lot more. And yeah, just like educating, like 60% of people who have abortions already have kids. That's a statistic I tell people all the time because I think sometimes people think that there's a certain type of person that has an abortion, whether that's a young person or whatever that looks like. So I think just saying, no, a lot of these people already have kids and are happy at the amount of kids they already have, and they just want to make sure they're able to support their families that they already have. And that's a huge reason why people have an abortion. So I think, yeah, like normalizing, destigmatizing, storytelling, those are all really great ways, and just not mirroring their harmful talking points.
Yeah. Those are some really incredible suggestions.
Yeah. That's such a good point, too, like about the misinformation, is I think that people can get sucked in, and it's such an emotional topic for, especially I think a lot of women. It's like, it's so personal. And, I mentioned earlier that like Roe was overturned while I was pregnant. And I just remember like spiraling and being like, I can't imagine doing this if I did not want this. Like, I am in hell right now. Like, I can't imagine doing this. And so just sort of tackling that anyway. So it's very emotional for everyone. Right. And that misinformation, I know sometimes when I hear it, that sends me through the roof, right? I'm like, that doesn't happen. That's not real.
Yeah.
But really kind of coming at it in a measured way. And just, nope, I'm not engaging in that. And I'm not going to mirror your chaos. Yep. I'm going to meet you with sort of fact, I think is a really good way to go into those conversations.
Exactly. And, connecting it with like birth justice too, I think is big, because in places where we have abortion bans, we see higher rates of maternal and child health. So it's really easy to just say, like, if you actually care about the lives of these women and babies, you would support abortion access, because there's a direct correlation between the health of parents and babies and the availability of abortion. We know that, like, as a fact. So I think like trying to pivot back to what they care about, and people are really moved by like values. So connecting it to what you know about their values and really pushing there tends to be better. Like, stats and figures help, but it's really like the deep emotional personal stories and values that moves people.
Yeah. I love how you said putting a name to it, too, because, everybody knows somebody who's had an abortion. Do you follow the Sweet Feminist?
Yeah, well, that's the National Network of Abortion Funds, like, whole logo. They have shirts. That's our whole thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that was the first time that I saw, at least in my adult life, somebody who was just like, putting it out there, like, I had an abortion.
Yeah.
Here's, what my life looks like.
Right.
Other than
and
that.
It's 1 in 3 people.
Yeah.
Well, if that can, still, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to take a step back and learn a little bit more about like your day-to-day work. Like, tell us about what you're focused on right now and how you're helping people in New Hampshire.
Great. So the Reproductive Freedom Fund of New Hampshire is a statewide grassroots abortion fund where our main role is always going to be funding abortion for folks that need our support. So that's kind of our primary thing that we do. We also provide what we call practical support. And that's really just all the other barriers that come up for folks. So if they need to get to their appointment, can we offer them gas money? Can we give them a ride? If they need to eat a meal with their medication, can we DoorDash food to their house? We pay for flights. We pay for hotel rooms. Sometimes these are 2-day procedures and people need a hotel close by to the hospital. So it's all those other little needs that arise. We're really trying to do our best to meet those as well, because we know all the time, like, those things can come between you and actually having your appointment. Mm-hmm. If you don't have childcare, if you don't have a way to get there. So really just making sure folks can actually access abortion. That's really like the core of our work. We have a hotline that people can call. We always respond within 24 hours. At this time, we're fully funding all New Hampshire folks. So I always try to tell people, like, don't worry, we will fund you. Yes, you have to make an appointment and, go through a phone call, but like, it will be a yes. Don't even worry about that piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really like the core of our work. And then we also have a Plan B distribution program. So we work with about 70 sites all around the state that help us give it out for free. Coffee shops, bookstores, all kinds of great local businesses. So I really encourage folks to look into that and where that is in their community. So that's kind of like our work in a nutshell.
Yeah. What kind of folks are you helping? I don't know if you can speak broadly on kind of what types of communities you find. Are you helping a lot of, is it, a big mix of people? Or?
I think it really is a big mix. So yeah, like I said, 60% already have kids under the age of 18. So we know that majority of them are already moms. But yeah, of course it's young people, it's college students, it's, really like there isn't a classic demographic. And I think that's important. Like, it's not just poor people. It's not just any one kind of person. It's really just like anyone who can get pregnant, like, may need this. And there's all kinds of factors that go into this. Like, maybe someone makes a lot of money, but their partner can't find out that they need an abortion. So they're calling us. not because they don't have money, but because it's not safe for them to access their money confidentially. Like there's so many reasons. Or maybe you have great insurance, but you have a high deductible and you've met $0 of that deductible. Then it's going to be subject to that deductible. So until you meet it, you have to pay the full price. So I think there's just a lot of things about abortion in particular that is like carved out as an exception in our healthcare system. Largely that's because of something called the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment has been around since Roe v. Wade was originally passed, and it prohibits all federal funding from going towards abortion. So Medicaid, Indian Health Services, like anything that is government-funded care cannot pay for the cost of abortion. So we've had calls from people that are like, hey, I have a really good private health insurance, but I work for the state, and it's not covering a cent of this. So look at your plans, people, because a lot of people have no idea that abortion is not actually covered.
I bet you bump into that a lot in your work where you discover all of these loopholes, and even just there's all these edge cases that people don't think about, like even what you're sharing about, somebody who maybe can't share with their partner that they're getting an abortion. And like there's, when you think about the traditional narratives around abortion, that's not what you're thinking about. But I'm sure that in your day-to-day work, you're seeing those stories that are really just a struggle for various reasons, whether it's financial or whether it's something in the home.
Yeah. And also some of them are very wanted pregnancies. And that's a really tough situation that I think a lot of people assume these are always like unwanted pregnancies. But we've helped a lot of patients that had their diagnostic ultrasounds at 20 weeks, as you do, and discover that their baby has a fatal fetal anomaly and won't survive. And so those patients need all kinds of wraparound support. They need emotional support. They need more logistical support because it's a 2-day procedure. So yeah, like I think also the assumption that, it's always these unwanted pregnancies is a big assumption to make. A lot of times, people really do want these children. It's just not going to work out. And yeah, I think those are cases that always really stir me emotionally. And yeah, really deserve attention.
I think there's been a big education shift around this topic recently. I'm curious what you think, but with the conversation around abortion, especially over the last couple of years, I feel like a lot of people are really learning that like, hey, these types of pregnancies that you're describing, that's qualified under an abortion. Where I think in the past, maybe like our parents' generation would have just kind of called that a miscarriage or called it something else.
Exactly.
But now it's like, no. And even when you talk to somebody about the topic, they're like, oh, well, of course, miscarriage is different. Miscarriage is a D&C in a lot of times. And I think a lot of societies, do you feel like society's starting to catch up with the reality? Or it seems like we obviously still have a really long way to go. But
I think you're right.
Baby steps.
Yeah, I think you're right that we're calling it an abortion more and we're talking more about those things. But I still think there's a lot of progress to be made in that space of, we've had people say like, I haven't shared this story with anyone before, or this happened 20 years ago and I'm finally ready to talk about it now. So I think also, people are always on their own journeys, but the more we all individually open up about our stories, like, all the time people will tell me their story because of the work I do. And they're like, I can't tell anyone this. And I really try to encourage them, like, you so can, as you feel safe and comfortable to, but I really think that is the answer. It's just normalizing it and destigmatizing it and sharing our stories.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe engaging in any kind of activism for the first time? I imagine you are moving through your day-to-day life, hearing a lot of heavy information from people. How do you sort of move through that? Like, how do you compartmentalize? Do you have any advice for people as they're feeling the immense weight of the world right now? And you've been fighting this fight for a long time. So do you have any advice for those of us who are new?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I had to learn is you just can't do it all. And, when I started out as an activist, I was going to every club on campus and really trying to do as much as I can. And then I realized I wasn't doing anything. I was just attending a bunch of meetings and I couldn't actually do any meaningful work because I was trying to take on too much. So I think my biggest advice, as much as possible, is find a couple of things that you can do and try to do them sustainably. It's much better to just commit to this is my weekly volunteer gig and I'm going to show up for this one organization cause every single week and really maintain that. I would take that over, someone who attends a meeting sporadically here or there, but doesn't really like engage. So like find your thing that you're really, really, really passionate about. And it's okay if that's just one or two things, but if you can do it consistently, I think that's really the most helpful thing that people can do.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think that people just tend to spread themselves too thin, especially when they get fired up.
And you have to quit everything.
Yeah.
Or maybe get overwhelmed because you put too much on your plate and then you're like, wait, I can't do any of these things. This is too much.
Yeah.
Or I think a lot of people right now are like doom scrolling and they're like, well, I can't do. It's like they get so overwhelmed by the internet and then they want to give up. And it's like, do something sustainable, pick an organization that you can support and align with.
And that can look so different. Some people donate, some people volunteer their time. There's so many ways that you can. And so I really encourage you, like, not everyone has to be at the protest. Not everyone has to be making TikTok videos, but just find whatever your thing is. And for some of us, it's like caretaking for people who are on the front lines. Like, that's a really valuable role too. Like, feed your activist friends, Venmo them, just show up for them, because I think a lot of us are just in a place where we're just giving and giving and giving, and it's really nice to feel seen and appreciated by people and cared for too. Like, we're people too, going through all the same emotions and feelings.
I love that. I love the idea of just nourishing those people who, do have the energy or the wherewithal to be able to go on the front line.
Totally.
So for somebody who is like, you know what, I'm ready, I want to jump in.
Yeah.
What is one quick thing they can do to get started?
Yeah.
To start supporting reproductive justice and abortion?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. One thing I really wanted to highlight here is, right now, and knock on wood, it is still legal to do this amazing thing called advance provision. And what that means is that currently anyone can order abortion pills for themselves for a future use. And we don't know how long that's going to be available. But that is one amazing thing that, like, if you think you might need an abortion in the next few years, you can do that and have it on hand. It costs $150. It's a pretty quick process. There's a couple different websites like Aid Access that do this. So that's just one, like, if you want to be prepared for your own future stuff, get some Plan B on hand, telling people that you have Plan B or pointing them to our resources. And then in terms of the fund, I always say, like, obviously donating is the most helpful. We are a fund, so all we do is sort of give out money. But I really like to encourage people to think about it as, like, it's almost can work like health insurance, in the sense that if all of us as a community pay a little bit into it, I also really encourage anyone to call us when they need it. Like, use us for the services that we provide. Don't feel ashamed or embarrassed to call us if you want support too, especially if you've been a monthly donor for years. Like, that's really how it works, is as a community fund by and for the people. So if you can donate, $10, $20 every single month, that is the most helpful thing for us, because it allows us to financially plan with that money, as opposed to one-time donations are great, but they don't give us the ability to increase our budget and really think more like long-term and sustainable. So I always have to go back to donating, because that really is, at the end of the day, what most nonprofits, especially in this field, are needing, because we don't get federal or state dollars. We are entirely like grassroots and grants. Those are really the only two categories we get. We don't get a lot of big corporations or foundations or anything like that. So it really is like people powered. Yeah.
That's a good point about the recurring donations that I don't know if everyone knows, is that sometimes I think we get fired up about something that's happening in the news or something that's happening in our judicial system, and we're like, I'm going to make a big donation somewhere. What I'm hearing you say is that it's actually more impactful if you can say, this is an organization I want to support throughout the year. Yeah. Instead of doing one big donation, maybe it's even a $5 or $10 a month, but it's consistent. That allows you guys to better plan.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's probably a little easier on some people's wallets too to manage. So
yeah,
when you're feeling that emotion, think about scheduling it out for the full year. I've been trying to do that with some of my donations too.
That's a huge one.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
chatting with us. Anything else that you want to share? Any advice you have for new folks to the fight? Anything you want to let people know?
I think my biggest thing right now is just like, go local as much as you can. I think I see a lot of people gravitating towards these really big national nonprofits with hundreds of millions of dollars of operations. And I just really want to highlight the importance of donating locally, especially I think in the repro space. Something that we've come up against a lot is, you know, some people think like we're not helping people in other states or that they need to donate to more like red states. But actually, sometimes those red states can't even operate as funds because of the legal landscape. So in environments where we don't have as much abortion restrictions, we're able to do a lot more in terms of helping more people. So just donate locally, like trust your local mutual aid organizations to get the money where it needs to go. But really, like those are the organizations that need it, not the big national ones that have these really big budgets. Even like your local state affiliates of those big national organizations. So Planned Parenthood of New Hampshire, ACLU of New Hampshire. Just even making the shift to donating to the more local chapters of those organizations opposed to the big national ones makes such a difference because we're able to just do so much more locally and we have so much more control over what happens to us in towns and even our state than we do federally. So I try really hard to not necessarily tune out what's happening federally because it's important to stay aware, but to really think about what's impacting my day-to-day here and helping locally.
That's really impactful.
Yeah.
I love it. I think having your lane and being able to sort of double down, it almost gives you a freedom of being able to say like, okay, I can't fix everything, but here's the one thing I can control and I'm going to put my energy there. Exactly. I think that that's like a beautiful way to try to move through the time that we're in right now, you know? It's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
We're trying.
Yeah. Sustain yourself. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. And buy plenty. No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're getting it from us. We have it. So you can take it. Just don't stockpile it. That's another big thing. I'm trying to tell people, like, it's there. It's not going anywhere. We'll have it. But, you know, trying to move people away from this, like, hyper individualism, looking out for myself to thinking about, I'm going to have a couple on hand, but I'm also going to donate to this organization so that they can help other people who need it. Like, really, we need to have a more collectivist mindset and move past this like hyper individualism, you know, only looking out for ourselves. So as much as possible, do those things, but also give back to your community at the same time.
I love that. We're building the future we want, you know, and building it, we're starting locally. I think that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you so much for sitting down.